In our line of work, there is no shortage of hazards. To ensure our team returns home safely at the end of each day, it's critical that everyone has a strong ability to recognize hazards using tools such as the Energy Wheel, identify and implement direct controls, and to understand and use the proper personal protective equipment. In addition to developing those skills, it's important to address the psychological side of risk perception and tolerance. We become keenly aware of potential hazards and the severity of injuries when we experience an injury ourselves. Our awareness is also elevated when we witness an injury. To provide the same dramatic outcome without causing actual injury, there's another highly effective way to ingrain these lessons and increase our awareness, using live safety demonstrations. Through extensive research at the University of Colorado, collaborating with industry partners across North America, it's been proven that safety demonstrations influence our risk perception and tolerance, result in dramatic changes in our emotional state, and yield long-term improvements in our safety engagements. To demonstrate the causes and consequences of common injuries, industry professionals and university researchers partnered to replicate real scenarios. The most common injured body part is the hand, accounting for over 1 million trips to the emergency room each year and representing approximately half of all injuries. Most hand injuries result in cuts, bruises, and broken bones. These injuries are typically caused by falling objects and materials, handling sharp objects, pinch points, and rotating equipment. Super realistic replicas of human hands were created, and injuries were simulated to provide workers with the experience of witnessing an injury without actual harm. Using principles from medicine and special effects, the hands were created with flesh that can be cut, veins that bleed, and bones that break. The injuries that you see in these demonstrations can and have happened. The Smasher demonstration was created to simulate a dropped object, such as a wooden skid, that falls and strikes a worker across the fingers. This hazard corresponds to the gravity category on the Energy Wheel. The Smasher is compact enough to be used in the training room, but spring-loaded and carefully calibrated to simulate a much larger falling object. This demonstration precisely mimics a 5-foot-long 4x4 dropped from 5 feet. When this injury occurs, it's not surprising that we see a tremendous amount of energy passed into the hand. The resulting pressure is approximately 180 psi, which is equivalent to being struck by the world record slap shot or having your hand run over by a Ford F-150. The demonstration clearly shows a hand injury, including both open and closed fractures. Impact-resistant gloves will reduce the energy to about 1/50th of its original force. Although an injury may still result, this protection could reduce the severity of the injury tremendously. The Smasher demonstration shows no visible fractures when an impact-resistant glove is used. Although we see a drastic improvement in the injury outcome when wearing proper gloves, we must remember that our first lines of defense are to identify hazards and design barriers around the energy, keep our hands out of the line of fire, and exercise caution when manually handling heavy objects. Our final precaution is to use proper PPE. The Slicer demonstration features a hand cut by a sharp object. This hazard corresponds to the motion category on the Energy Wheel. Our projects and facility work often require us to cut and transport materials and work with sharp edges and scrap. Common injuries occur when working with thin gauge metal such as steel studs and ductwork, when using open blades, or when someone grips or pulls sharp materials such as steel pipe cut shavings. The demonstration shows how sharp these objects are, how easily a bare hand can be cut, and how ineffective the wrong gloves can be. The Slicer demonstration requires a force similar to a firm handshake. As the operator pulls on the handle, the slicer glides across the hand, causing a serious but realistic injury. As you can see, with just moderate pressure, a sharp steel object can cut a hand like butter. A light pull of a sharp blade results in 8,000 psi of pressure applied to the hand, equivalent to 1,000 times the contact pressure under the tire of a fully loaded dump trailer. A strong pull on the slicer results in over 40,000 psi and nearly cuts the hand in half. Handling objects which are substantially thicker than a blade can still cause injury. A strong grip on an exposed edge of a 16-gauge stud results in contact pressures approaching 4,000 psi. Unfortunately, leather gloves are ineffective at protecting against a sharp object. We only have sufficient hand protection from gloves with cut-resistant ratings. When sharp objects contact these gloves, the material is strong enough to resist most cutting forces. Although it's never good practice to handle or pull sharp objects, these gloves provide significant protection against accidental contact. Although we see a drastic improvement in the injury outcome when wearing proper gloves, we must remember that our first lines of defense are to identify hazards, use the appropriate guards and protective barriers, keep our hands out of the line of fire, and exercise caution when manually handling objects. Our final precaution is to use proper PPE. The spinner demonstration was created to simulate a belt and sheave system with rotating parts which can rapidly draw the hand or other body parts into a machine. This hazard corresponds to the mechanical category on the energy wheel. The spinner dramatically shows how fast a hand can catch in spinning parts and how significant an injury could be. The finger in this video wrapped around the sheave in less than 1/10 of a second. The spinner demonstration is powered by a simple cordless drill, resulting in an average belt velocity of 5 feet per second, drawing a hand into the device very quickly. Scale this up to an industrial belt-driven fan, and someone might be exposed to a belt velocity of upwards of 100 feet per second, with significantly more horsepower. In such a scenario, an injury would result in something much more severe than losing a finger. When witnessing this demonstration, it becomes immediately apparent that working around spinning parts can result in life-altering injuries. The spinner shows flesh pulled from bone and fractures of the fingers. With mechanical systems and moving parts, we must remember that our first lines of defense are to identify hazards, design barriers around the energy and use proper guarding, and keep our hands out of the line of fire. Depending on the application and the policies of our organization, our final precaution is to evaluate and use proper PPE. Using the concept of the energy wheel, many additional demonstrations are in various phases of development, including simulations beyond hand injuries. All demonstrations have been built through close coordination with industry partners to replicate realistic and common hazards. Based on extensive research, these demonstrations cause a dramatic change in our emotional state, influence our risk perception and tolerance, and yield long-term improvement. If you're interested in live safety demonstrations for your program, we offer complete kits to start training right out of the box. First, we provide demonstrations such as the smasher, slicer, and spinner. These demonstrations are hand-built in a custom carpentry shop in the US. Next, we provide a kit consisting of hyper-realistic hands, simulated blood, and the tools and instructions you'll need to prepare the hands for demonstrations, complete with recommendations to precisely mimic human blood pressure. We also provide training materials, including videos and presentations, to prepare your demonstrations and to train your trainers. We provide all the tools you'll need to deliver an experience to your team that they won't forget. If your organization has a need for a different type of demonstration, we work closely with safety and operations teams to meet those needs and create custom demos and training packages. To provide your team with a comprehensive, consistent message, we also provide online, on-demand safety training. This training is based on years of university research paired with industry collaboration. Just like the live safety demonstrations, each online course is backed by defendable science with a mission to prevent serious injuries and fatalities in your workplace. Every minute of this online training series synthesizes years of field-validated research intended to improve your safety performance. If you're interested to elevate your safety training program and explore live safety demonstrations or online safety courses, please visit us at safetyfunction.com.